This is a recording of William Escher, 515 Southwest 18th Street, Boynton Beach, Florida, 33426. Bill's phone number is area code 407-732-8203. The recording was made on January 12, 1989, by Jim Walkinshaw of the Oldsmobile History Center at Bill's home. This is tape number 1 of 2 tapes. Okay, Bill, maybe you could start with your name and address and phone number, if you would, please.
Okay. My name is William Escher. I live at 515 Southwest 18th Street, Boynton Beach, Florida. My phone number is 732-8203. The area code is 407.
What's your zip code down here?
Zip code is 33426.
Okay, great. Maybe, Bill, you could then just take us back to when it was you started and the circumstances which surrounded that.
I originally went to work for Oldsmobile. It was then Olds Motor Works in Lansing, Michigan. I reported for duty there August 1st, 1927.
Okay.
I was one of a group of 13 college graduates from schools from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, through Michigan and Ohio.
All right. How were you picked as students at that time?
The committee of 3 men from Olds Motor Works, Mr. Eby was assistant to the president, and Mr. Roberts from personnel, and an assistant general sales manager by the name of Collins, visited some 8 or 10 universities in the East and Midwest as far as Ohio and Michigan. At each of those schools, they interviewed graduating seniors who had followed courses in those schools which these men felt would be of value in the automobile business.
Okay.
And was their motive and aim to provide some new blood for the sales department of Olds Motor Works.
Okay. What was your education in, Bill?
I have a degree in engineering.
Engineering. Okay.
From Carnegie Tech.
Did they were looking for technical kinds of people?
Well,
generally,
engineering graduates, as you know,
yeah.
generally are in good demand compared with others. And the schools they chose in this case, they certainly were good schools: University of Pennsylvania, University of Pittsburgh, Carnegie Tech, Ohio State University, Michigan University, Michigan State University, University of Cincinnati. And they had, but I think it was a pretty good selection of men from those various schools.
Were most of those people technical like yourself?
I don't really know that.
All right.
There were some were, but I don't know that this was.
It was
It wasn't across the board.
All right.
Because I know some of them. One of them you would know probably, Gerald Montgomery. He's dead now, but he was a neighbor of mine here.
Understood.
That time. And he was in a totally non-technical course at Michigan State, and I know that as one example.
All right. Now, they, out of that, they would interview several students at each campus.
They made interviews. They were available for interviews for, so generally speaking, firms that came to schools were available for either one or a couple of days, during which time they just took as many applicants as they could fit into their schedules.
Okay. Did you have to sign up, or how did you get on?
There was no signing up or anything. We were interviewed by the 3 men, and just conversation ensued, questions and answers on each side across the board.
Yeah.
They were quite well, as I look at it now, they were quite well conducted.
Okay, that's very interesting. Out of all of that, then, you did get a job offer.
Finally, I got a job offer. While I was still in school, I had several interviews, and there were a number of them that I felt I was interested in. And as time went on, I didn't hear from some of them. I got after them, so I wrote to Oldsmobile Works and asked them what they were going to do about the thing, and received a letter in response dated April 25, 1927, from Mr. Eby, the Assistant to the President, in which he formally offered me the position with Oldsmobile Works.
Okay.
I report for duty then, as I said, on August 1st, 1927. And for the next year, I, along with the rest of these applicants, employees at that time, were assigned to various production jobs through some of the plants. The axle plant and the engine plant were really the only plants in which we worked. But we worked on a lot of jobs in each one.
What kinds of things would have been typical that you might have done in those days?
I would probably not be able to describe them very well, but they'd move you just about the time you got so you knew how to do one job. They'd move you to the next one, so it was really a little bit of a harder job than the regular employees had, because they only had to learn the one job and then work at it. This way, as soon as you got your knuckles all knocked off this machine, you had to find a place where you went and lifted heavy weights from. But it was the most interesting experience, both with work we had to do and the people with whom we worked, because both those things were brand new to most of us, maybe all of us.
Never been in a plant?
Well, we've been in plants just on inspection trips in school as far as working, and this is the first real work any of us had done. So it was an interesting year, though it kept you pretty dirty and pretty scarred up and sometimes pretty mad. Then from time to time, as we were working along, they would have a meeting of us and tell us some things about this, that, and the other thing, about what we've been doing or what we would be doing.
Okay.
At the end of that year of production work, all of us were assigned to one of the branches that had retail sales operations as well as general operations for Oldsmobile Works.
Okay.
Some of us were assigned to the store in Detroit, some to the store in Atlanta, and a few to the exhibit in Atlantic City.
Now, were those owned by Oldsmobile, so to speak?
These branches? Oh yes, owned and operated by them. They were entirely so. Just as we have zone offices today, these branch offices were merely what we call a zone office today, plus a retail sales operation.
So they actually sold cars there?
Yes, but not in all places, not in all cities.
Okay.
After we had completed a year in retail sales work.
Now, Bill, excuse me for interrupting. Sure. Were you actually selling cars at that juncture?
Yeah, we did just exactly what the other retail salesmen employed in those retail stores did.
Okay.
We operated under the retail sales manager in that store, and we worked every day. We looked for people.
Did you go out and bang on doors?
Oh yes, we did phone calls. We did all sorts of prospecting things, because that's the biggest job, to get somebody to talk to about a car. We demonstrated automobiles, and we tried to sell automobiles. We finally brought in the prospect where we thought we had them ready, and the sales manager would help us close up a sale.
Okay.
So it was actually work, just as much work here as it was in the plant. It was production work. Here it was retail sales work.
Oh yeah, okay.
At the end of that year of retail sales experience, if we hadn't quit or gotten fired by that time, it would be a very elegant program you can.
No problem.
At the end of that job of work, if we were still there, we were offered jobs, one place or another, in the sales organization. Some men were offered jobs in Lansing
Okay.
in the sales department. Some of us were offered jobs in actual field work. Most of us went that route.
Okay, that would be like at the Detroit office or that sort of thing?
Yes, we were assigned then to whatever. We were shipped to any zone then it was possible. Then not enough to cover all zones. Back at that time, or a little later than that, we had 28 zones.
All right.
So we were assigned as district representatives, was then the job title,
Okay.
the job, which meant that we lived in some city in one of the districts that made up a zone, and were responsible for dealer contact work and also finding new dealers where we did need dealers.
All right.
And traveled every day.
All right.
So,
What did you have to, you say dealer contact work, what kind of things would be a typical?
well, you had to learn some things in the first place to do. You have contact with the dealers from a number of angles. In the first place, not in the first place, but I will put it there, just detail work that's just incidental to any doing business.
Number
This
crunching?
zone represents to the dealer Oldsmobile Works
All right.
at that time. He wants anything done about the business he's doing. He does it with the local zone office.
Okay.
or
He didn't
branch
deal with
office.
the factory per se?
No, directly, no.
All right.
That's right. So, in addition to that, a district representative did all the things that were necessary, or not tried to do all the things that were necessary to help him improve the quality of the dealership. Dealership has to make money, or it's not a good dealership in
Right.
the first place, because it ain't going to last.
Yeah.
So we had to learn business management. We had to learn to read a dealer financial statement. We had to learn to the point where we could intelligently talk to the dealer in his place of business about what that statement meant to him, what he was doing here, and what the result of it was there, and so forth and so on.
So you were sort of helping him analyze his operation?
That was very definitely a part of your responsibility. In addition to that, you sold him cars, parts, and accessories.
Okay.
The reason for our being and
Sure.
the source of our own
Sure.
paychecks.
Yeah.
Did
Did he have did you have quotas in those days, or how did you allocate cars to people, so to speak?
Well, that's an excellent question. Rather difficult to answer, but every car manufacturer who operated with dealerships had to devise some measuring stick, like the size of your collar in a shirt,
Yeah.
the sleeve length. If you wear 16 by 36,
Yeah.
that describes your shirt.
Right.
All right. We had to find a way of putting a tag on each dealership, or rather, on each dealer town, as whether it was a 50-car dealership,
Okay.
meaning 50 car sales a year would be an average
The
job.
volume.
Yes, or 1,000, or whatever it happened to be. So studies of that type, which are done in the home office in Lansing, developed what eventually, years later, when it got refined, was called a planning potential.
All right. But were those kinds of thoughts going on in the late 20s? That approach, so to speak?
Well, no, not to that
All right.
extent.
Okay.
And back at that time, the thing was a bit more crude, and somebody in the zone office had decided that this was a 40-car dealership and ought to sell 40 cars, or 250 cars, or whatever the number might be.
All right. Sort of unilateral.
Oh yes, it was that, and some of them were bad guesses.
Yeah.
That's the thing that of course, developed the need for developing a factual and logical measuring stick,
A better approach.
the planning potential.
Yeah.
So, given that, that of course applies to an average year,
Sure.
which you never have.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
for the sake of measuring the efficiency of the job, sales job that any dealer was done or any zone was doing, you rely on registrations, car registrations, and the percent of those registrations which are Oldsmobile.
All right.
It's the only thing we're selling. Now with that, you've got a very fair measuring stick, applying that to all dealers, and this was being used back then.
That was available.
Yes, that was available and furnished for dealer use and for the fieldwork use, of course. So your job there was to see, you look at what the representative had to do by considering what is it that a dealer does. A dealer primarily sells new cars.
Right.
In order to do that, he has to buy, in effect, and sell used cars. In addition to that, he has to have a service operation. That requires a parts operation. And that's what goes to make up a dealership.
Okay. So did you have to help them then, Bill, on like how to take care of used cars?
Everything.
And all that stuff.
Everything that the dealer is supposed to do, we are supposed to acquire as district representatives. Of course, this takes time because when you first go in the first dealership, you don't know a darn thing about it.
Big surprise.
That's what it amounts to.
Yeah.
That's why it takes some years of traveling to sort of rub off enough stuff on you so that you're really capable of doing that. But it actually works. It works out all right. So that after some years, a few years of experience, and you acquired some of it quite rapidly.
Yes.
So you can actually start operating as you go into the field.
Were you also the kind of guy, did you have customer complaints in those days? And
Everything.
Did you handle those kinds of things too?
Of course, the complaint thing back at that time was not as highly developed or glossed over with stuff as you have it today.
Yes.
But yes, anything that happened in the dealership
So it was
as a result of the business is your business as a district representative.
It was a
You
broad
go into
stroke
it.
job.
That's right. You're supposed to do everything.
Yeah.
Jack
of all trades.
Damn good at each of them. But in my case now, when I came to that point and finished my year of retail experience, I was assigned as a district representative with the headquarters in Jacksonville, Florida.
Oh, all right.
And from Jacksonville, I lived in Jacksonville, and I traveled as far south as Melbourne on the East Coast.
Oh, yes.
And as far west as Tallahassee. And in addition to that northern part of Florida, I didn't have Orlando.
All right.
From Ocala North inland.
All right.
In addition to that, I had a strip of southern Georgia.
All right.
Running
Kind
across.
of that abutted Florida there.
Yes. Thomasville, Valdosta, Waycross, Brunswick. Very major towns.
Were you on the road then, Bill?
All the time.
Driving? Is that what you're
Every
doing?
day.
Driving.
Every day. You were seldom home. You got home Friday night.
Oh.
You went out Monday morning. Because at that particular time, I came into Florida in 1928, this was.
Okay.
When I came to Jacksonville. That was the year after the great flood, hurricane in Florida, which was the year before. So Florida was really at a low ebb. In fact, in the area that I described, I had 3 dealers.
Oh, my Lord.
None in Jacksonville. And with orders to not try to do anything about that because 2 men from Lansing had been down in Jacksonville for 3 months trying to get a dealer and couldn't get a smell.
Isn't that something?
My dealers, one in Daytona Beach, one in Ocala, Florida, and one in Brunswick, Georgia.
Isn't that interesting?
All the rest of it are what we call open points, points in which we should have dealers. So that's what I was supposed to do. And right at that time, I don't know anybody. I didn't get any dealers. Now, I don't know anybody that could have right then.
Just because of the economic after that.
Yes, that was right. That. And this was, I gave you the wrong date, I think, a minute ago. This was in 29.
Okay.
And that was the year, you'll remember, of the big flop in Wall Street in October.
Yeah.
So that's what happened to business in general at that time.
Yeah.
Anyway, the business goes on. About, let's see, I made some note about it. It's about February of 1930, I was transferred to Chattanooga, Tennessee,
Okay.
another district. Lived in Chattanooga, traveled East Tennessee, and a little bit of North Georgia.
All right.
This was a much better business territory than Florida was at that time.
Florida was not obviously not built up.
No,
It was
oh
just,
no, you could, when I started driving from Jacksonville, I could drive to Daytona Beach and I maybe pass 6 cars.
Oh, boy. Slightly different.
Yeah, it was. So anyway, here I was in another job, this is Chattanooga, Tennessee.
Okay.
About
Same kind of task?
exactly the same job.
All right.
There were, of course, I had a better number of dealers and some pretty good dealers, and that was the first time I was really around the automobile business.
All right.
That's when I moved to Chattanooga.
Okay. Now this was kind of, the Depression was happening.
Oh yes, the Depression was still there, and it hung around for a while because in '31 I moved to Savannah, Georgia,
Okay.
and that too was a much better territory than Florida, but still it was a bad business time in general.
Cars weren't selling very great.
Nope. So then in '32, January '32, about, I moved to Atlanta because back at that time, General Motors foresaw the bad depression that we were going into and decided they'd set up a couple of experiments to find out how it would work for one man to represent several divisions, not just one division.
Okay.
So they established 2 such experimental setups. They set up SE Sales Company in Atlanta, Georgia. It's headed by Ralph Myers.
Yeah.
He then took over the personnel of Buick, Olds, Pontiac, and Cadillac.
All right.
And we went through a hell of a schooling there because this was a brand new idea.
Sure.
Because all the Pontiac or Buick had been a day before was competition. Now there's something I'm selling.
Yeah.
So this makes quite a different force out of the thing. Well, this was a very good education there. Ralph Myers was a very capable man. I don't know if you know his name at all, but he had been in the corporation for quite a long time, and he was real good. He was brighter than hell. And he ran this thing. It was entirely independent of the central offices of the divisions. We had our own selling agreement written for SE Sales Company.
So it's almost like a little company by itself.
It was that, and it operated just like it was entirely independent of any other division, merely reporting to the corporation. Now there was another one, the Northwest Sales Company, placed out in Montana.
All right.
Those are the 2 trial horses they took on back at that time. The only thing that was wrong is they didn't do it soon enough, because the real depression came on them quicker than they thought. So really, that SE Sales Company and Northwest Sales Company only lived about 4 or 5 months.
Oh my Lord.
By that time, things had gone to pot so bad that they had to do this, whether they learned how to do it yet or not.
I see. Okay.
However, that period of time that they had then was very helpful. I don't mean to belittle that. It took us through maybe high school, but it didn't take us through the college.
Yeah. A lot of learning went on though.
This is right. So then what we went to next, that was Atlanta, SE Sales Company. Then when they modified that somewhat because they found that it didn't quite work quite well for Cadillac. It worked pretty good for the others, Buick, Olds, and Pontiac. So they actually set up then BOP Sales Company,
I've heard
which
of that.
operated nationally.
All right.
And that, just as its name implies, they handled Buick, Oldsmobile, and Pontiac field work entirely.
All right.
And we called on all those dealers. So that, of course, went along a little different too. we finally got out of that when Oldsmobile broke out. Now, the others broke out. BOP broke up.
All right.
I don't mean it fell apart.
No.
I meant that there was enough promise of the future that they reopened and started to reestablish the individualities of the various divisions. So that when that happened, that caused my transfer. I moved to Memphis.
Well, you sure spent a lot of time moving.
Oh yes, I did. And I went to Memphis for promotion. I don't know when they changed the name from district representative to district manager.
All right.
Someplace along the line that happened.
Okay.
So anyway, I had been a district manager up to this time.
All right.
And right then, I was promoted to sales promotion manager of the Memphis zone of BOP Sales Company, along with the transfer. So that changed everything for me in a large bundle. So I went there. I might tell you that, well, when I went there originally, Mr. Ackerman was the zone manager. He had been Cleveland zone manager for Oldsmobile before. Then,
well, just back up a notch.
Sure.
When you became that new assignment, now did that change what you had to do?
Well, you're referring to
your manager.
sales promotion?
Yeah, sales
Well, I'm
promotion.
sales promotion manager. I'm one. There's just one of those in a zone. There was at that time.
But what
There
was
isn't
what
one
was the
today.
task at that time?
Do everything of a sales promotional nature for the zone.
Is that like advertising?
No,
and
well,
that stuff?
advertising, that was always handled in one bunch. That had to be. But the matter of trying to, well, you tried to promote sales. In fact, you held a bunch of sales meetings with dealer salesmen. You tried to stimulate setting up those contests within a dealership to do sales and whatnot. Anything that lends itself to promotion of sales, just like the name says. That was the job of a sales promotion manager. That didn't last long. Because shortly after that, the zone manager there, at that time, that must have been Bob Peak by that time. Yeah, yes it was. He had an old friend that he hired as a sales promotion manager, so I became the organization manager. Now the job as organization manager in the zone was to do all those things necessary to get new dealers where you need new dealers. Just new dealers. So that was that job. And then when BOP broke up, I reverted back and became a district manager again with Oldsmobile and was transferred to Little Rock, Arkansas. Bob Peak was one of my zone managers there, and Frank Spexarth was a manager the rest of the time. So I was in Little Rock about a year. Then I got promoted to assistant zone manager. I moved back to Memphis as assistant zone manager. And that was under Frank Spexarth.
Now would that tend to be more of an office, back at the zone office sort of job, or would that have...
Well, all of it entails traveling.
All of that does.
Yes, but not as much traveling as was. I'd be in town generally on this job as assistant zone manager 2 or 3 days a week. I'd be in town. The rest would be traveling.
Now, had you gotten through the low spot in the Depression at this juncture, or were we still struggling?
No, we're still in that because the time I was on that was back in '33. So it's just beginning to be a dim light ahead. They hoped.
Well, what was happening? How did you sell cars in that arena when there was just so much problem?
Well, of course, people always have to buy cars, so the number can vary widely from year to year that they have to buy. But they've got to sell cars, and they've got to have cars that they already have serviced. So there's an automobile business all the time. So some dealers went out of business.
There were some that failed.
Oh yes. Well, they closed up before they failed.
I see.
And some also failed. But some stuck right through it because a dealer could exist. He could exist buying and selling used cars.
And service.
They're the only two sources of income that were left to a dealer during the bad part of the Depression.
Because really
'Cause
people,
of course, we shut down production.
yeah, I was going to say, we just didn't make hardly any cars, so we must not have
So
sold
we
any.
shut down.
Yeah,
We didn't build any car
yeah,
for a period.
yeah.
So,
Now, the Viking was in there someplace.
well, that comes in about 20,
29 or 30, somewhere in there.
yeah, that was, yeah, that's about right. About 30. 29 and 30, I think,
Yeah.
are the years of the
Yeah.
Viking.
Do you remember that car itself?
Oh, yes.
It didn't go because it was ill-timed?
I don't know. I think in the first place, we didn't know how to sell it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and our dealers too, we were used to one price class and what
Yeah.
it was like,
Yeah.
and Viking was there.
Okay, back to the Viking.
Okay, the Viking was a damn good automobile.
Was it a higher-priced vehicle?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, okay.
It was, prices, that's the thing
No,
that were astounding because of course they don't compare with prices today.
sure.
In fact, when I was in retail sales in Atlanta, we had a two-door sedan that got us under $1,000.
Uh-huh, yeah, sure. Sure can't do that today.
No, you sure can.
But you think it was maybe people hadn't been
Well,
instructed?
of course,
or-
a new brand name has always got a tough life.
Yeah,
Because the people say, no, I'll wait a couple of years before I buy one of those.
Sure.
Get the bugs out of me
yeah,
first.
yeah. People felt that way in those days too. Huh?
Sure, yeah, people don't change
Yeah,
very much
yeah.
from then to now, I don't think.
Okay.
Except they're worse now. Anyway, the Viking was a real job. It was a great automobile. It
Uh-huh.
really was fine. It was way ahead of its time. And that, it was just a pleasure to drive on those things.
It had a V8 engine, as I remember. Uh-huh.
That's right. That was a fine car.
Uh-huh.
But it
It didn't
was
fly.
not successful.
Yeah, it
So,
failed. Uh-huh.
commercially unsuccessful,
Yeah.
that's that.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Anyway,
Okay.
let's see. I'm back about
Somewhere 33 or
I'm in
34. somewhere.
Arkansas, I think.
All right.
I left,
Yeah, right.
left myself. So I was about a year in Arkansas, and then I was moved back into Memphis as assistant zone manager.
All right.
That's where it was. Now, I was there for quite a long time on that job because things stayed bad
Mm-hmm.
in the business way. And for a while there, see the way the zones are operated, under Lansing, first you have regions.
Mm-hmm.
At that time there were 6 regions, 28 zones.
All right.
Each regional manager had a group then of 4 or 5 zones
All right.
that he supervised.
Mm-hmm.
And then he was directly supervised from the sales department in Lansing.
Okay. Did we still have those places that sold cars direct, like you had at Detroit and?
No, they went out. I can't tell you when
All
because
right.
it was a dribbling process. But they went out.
By then they were
went out.
gone. Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's about
Okay.
right.
All right.
Okay, then I was in Memphis. I went through a couple of zone managers there. Spexarth, Tim Agee
Mm-hmm.
were my zone managers. Then
Did those people tend to, excuse the interruption again, did the zone managers tend to get moved around a lot too?
not as much as I was,
Uh-huh.
as lower ranked
Yeah.
guy.
Okay.
But yes,
They did?
they got moved too.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, they
Okay.
did. So, let's see. Time went on. Memphis. Okay, next thing that came along is the war came and we quit production.
Okay.
And I went from being an assistant zone manager in Memphis to being a district representative because they closed up the Memphis zone
Okay.
along with some other zones.
Yeah.
And I was put under the St. Louis zone. My zone manager, Tim Agee, was made assistant zone manager in St. Louis, the home zone, and I stayed in Memphis, but I then had what would formerly been the Memphis zone for my district.
Okay.
That consisted of states of Mississippi, Louisiana,
Oh,
and
wow.
Arkansas, a little bit of Missouri, and a little bit of Kentucky.
Big area.
And also we were traveling on rationed gasoline with B coupons, which didn't let us travel by car. So I had to travel out of Memphis by train at the beginning of each week to one of the points where we had cars stored, and travel out around there and put that back in, then take a night train back to Memphis on Friday night.
Oh, gracious.
That lasted for 4 years.
How did we handle the cars that we had? We must have had some cars that we put away, so to speak?
Well, we put away some to save the cars just for our own use.
Yeah.
But there weren't enough cars to be important to the dealer body.
Yeah.
But there were enough cars so that for some years we could draw on that stock of cars. We might have a dozen or 2 dozen cars in a given city.
All right.
Well, over a period of time, you buy and sell those things. You run a file on them, you get rid of them.
But during the war, then what did the dealers do? They didn't, once again, they had no cars.
Used cars, service.
Back to that again.
A lot of them went out of business, because that was quite a period.
Yeah, that was a long time.
Yeah, sure was.
Okay.
Finally got over that period, and I got transferred to Cincinnati with the resumption of what I'd been promoted to before.
This is
the
like,
second time I'd been promoted to assistant zone manager.
This is after the war now.
This takes a bunch of time out of my life.
Oh yeah, sure, it does.
Anyway, went to Cincinnati. Joe Folsom was the zone manager there at that time, and I was there 2 years. And at the end of those 2 years, they started reopening the zones they had closed.
All right.
And so I was called to Lansing, and Mr. Ralston was general sales manager right at that time.
Okay.
He told me he was make me zone manager, and that I could have my choice of either going back to Memphis or going to Charlotte, North Carolina. So I'd been in Memphis quite a long time.
Right.
So I picked Charlotte.
Okay.
So I went to Charlotte as zone manager. That was in '47.
Now we were making cars now.
Yes. So we were back in business, and Charlotte was a very nice little zone to work with. It consisted just of 2 states, North and South Carolina.
Oh yeah.
And that doesn't compare in size with
like
the Memphis zone I had been wandering around in. So Charlotte's a nice place to live too. It's a good country up there. So I was in Charlotte for 4 years, and at that time I was pulled back into Lansing, and I became manager of the organization and analysis department.
Okay. Did that exist prior to that point in time?
Oh yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a great thing. So I was there, and I was there in Lansing and on that job until I retired.
Okay. Well, what kinds of things, Bill, went on in the O&A department? What was its task?
That's what everybody calls it, the O&A department. Can't blame them, because the name certainly wasn't descriptive. When you tell somebody I'm the manager of the organization and analysis department, they think you're the president or something. The guy sounds like that, but that's a hell of an impression to start with. So, what we were responsible for. Okay, the major things, the 10-day report system.
All right.
To operate business properly, everybody in the business, from the dealer on up through the district manager and the zone manager and the general sales manager, has to know all that's possible to know about how many cars you got in stock, where are they, what kind of cars are they, and how are they moving. So the 10-day report system was a system of reporting by each dealer each 10 days the new and used car stock at that date and the sales of each for the 10-day period immediately past. Well, when you've got 3,000 and some dealers in 28 zones, a good bit of clerical work has to go on between that one dealer report and something you can put on the general sales manager's desk to show him what's happened. So the 10-day report system, keeping the system in operation and improving it where it's possible, whatnot, and in the actual handling of the national recapping of the zone reports. That's one of the jobs that O&A department had.
Now that process,
That's all gone now.
but
That was all manually done then.
yeah, but back up a little bit again,
Sure.
Bill, if you would. When did that sort of process start? Had that started?
Reporting?
Yeah, had that started
Oh,
a long time prior to that?
you had 10-day reports,
in the 30s?
Oh, we had tender reports in the 30s.
All right.
Maybe before that, I don't know.
Okay.
But yes, the 10-day report has been a...
Was a thing. It was an institution.
Yeah, the 10-day period, it got to be stuck in my head. I still do some things by 10-day periods, and people think I'm crazy because I don't know anybody now that knows what a 10-day period was.
Sure.
So,
Okay.
yeah, that's... well, that was one of the jobs we had.
Okay.
Another of the jobs we had was the handling, the distribution, the interpretation, and the doing the mechanics of the dealer selling agreement. You see, Oldsmobile Division has, with each dealership, a written selling agreement,
Okay.
which is a rather complex thing, prepared, of course, by the legal department,
It's a contract.
which covers everything about the relationship, the rights, the obligations of each of the two parties and whatnot. So from time to time things change and they have to change the selling agreement. Well, somebody has to explain these changes to the things, people in the field. Somebody has to arrange all the handling physically of dealer selling agreements, which all were for a period of time and had to be renewed year to year. Whatnot. So that was one of our jobs.
Okay.
And then another one of our jobs was the planning of dealer body and the way the dealer organization. Where should we have dealers,
Okay.
and how many,
All right, so-
and how big are they going to be, and whatnot? What is the planning potential for those dealers and whatnot? Those are our three major jobs in that department. They're enough to keep you busy.
Yeah. Now, the planning potential thing, that sort of had to come to pass sometime from in the 20s when that didn't exist. And when would that have
Well,
sort of,
it sort of milled along in a rather crude way for some years, and then there got to be more study of the basic statistics.
Yeah, more science
referred
in
to.
back of it.
Yes, it got to be better systematized. We got more material with it to work, and we could develop reliable figures. The actual planning potential in that name actually came into being not by Oldsmobile, but by the corporation. At least they promoted the handling of that thing. That happened while I was in Lansing as the manager of the department.
Okay.
And we went through quite a bunch of struggles evolving this particular thing and satisfying everybody there in Lansing, some who didn't know much about what it was we were doing.
right?
We had to do that and promote it. We finally got a very good planning potential system set up. And there was some, basically, all divisions had the same thing.
Yeah.
But they aren't quite alike. Just like breakfast might be different in your house
Sure.
or my house and whatnot. So we had our own to worry with, and we had the humps to get over to get it. We got that done by, and they've got a very sensible system, I know, today. But
Okay.
now the O&A department must be quite different today because, of course, there's none of the manual work on the 10-day report to do. It's all mechanized now.
Now, when you were
computerized.
doing it was all by hand.
Yes.
Everything was by hand.
The computerization started the last years I was there.
All right.
But it didn't actually affect, well, it did affect us in part on the 10-day report. It took some of the stuff out of the work that had been mechanical work before.
That must have been a horrendous task, resolving all those numbers each 10 days.
It was, but it's really very simple, because all the dealer's 10-day report says is my stock was so much last 10-day period. I received so many cars. I sold so many cars. I got so many cars now. That's all the 10-day report
But
says.
didn't
It covered both new and used cars.
Didn't you, when you had so many dealers, didn't you get guys out there that would forget to do it or wouldn't do it or would screw it up? Or,
but you could make all you do is make them unhappy as you could for each time they missed. And they were quite cooperative about it because most dealers realized quite well that there's some real asset value attached to the manufacturer, aside from the fact that he's the source of the materials you sell.
Yeah.
So some dealers distrust everything you tell them.
Oh, yeah. That's
That's
human nature, I guess.
True in
Yeah.
any business,
Yeah.
but most of them are quite cooperative on things at that time. And they were in the habit, because you're after them every 10 days. Furnish
Kind
the
of
form, something to do it with, whatnot.
Regular.
And it works. And it's handling the figures is really just a job of work.
Yeah.
It isn't particularly
Yeah.
abstruse.
Yeah. Well, now, after the war, the opposite of what happened during the Depression occurred. Everybody wanted a car, and there weren't any available. Did that cause any unique problems?
Well, not particularly, except you had dealers trying to bribe everybody in the factory organization to get them one more car.
They were allocated to dealers now.
Well,
Yeah.
of course you have,
Uh-huh.
because the dealer can order cars, but all you can do is, you've got a zone allotment of so many. All you can give him is so many, and you've got to be fair about
Kind
that.
of a ratio of whatever was allotted, so to speak.
Yeah, well, you get back again to planning potential,
Yeah, all right.
his relationship in size to other dealers, the size of his market compared to other markets.
Did you have dealers that were significantly, I'll call them better, in that you would have a planning potential for a guy and he might be able to exceed that
Oh, yeah.
quite easily?
You shouldn't change his planning potential for that.
Okay.
You did let it enter in a minor way.
Uh-huh.
If the performance was and continued to be above average in that, you let it work a little bit, but not much.
Not much.
Because if this guy is doing that good, he should be made to look that good.
Uh-huh.
So you can't keep
Okay,
stretching
don't
the
raise the
yardstick.
standard. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can't keep raising the standard on the thing,
Uh-huh.
and just because he's doing a good job.
Yeah.
Just as you couldn't cut it when you had a louse.
Yeah, yeah. Did we attempt to, I'm going to, bad word, get rid of not so great dealers?
Yeah, the term was canceled. And,
Oh, cancel, okay, whatever you
that was,
used. Yeah.
that was one of the, that's part of the handling of
It's contract
dealerships.
change.
It comes, it belonged to any department.
Were the contracts a yearly occurrence?
Yeah.
Every year, the guy had to renew his,
Yep.
his agreement.
Yep.
Did dealers on occasion just decide to quit?
Sure.
And they would just leave?
Well, they tell you they're closed up.
Yeah.
Where do I ship the parts?
Uh-huh.
They sell back what they could to us and liquidate the rest if that's what they wanted to do. Nothing you can do about it.
Would we then go out and attempt to create a dealership in that area
Sure.
to replace that one? So to speak?
If it were a logical dealer
Yeah.
location, yes.
Uh-huh.
And there's a market there for it.
Yeah, how about the dual dealer business that where we had some other brand of car or even?
You can't stop a dealer legally from doing that.
Okay, so he could handle 3 different kinds of cars and.
You could, of course. Of course, you have a problem there because I mean it's a more complicated thing. Obviously, where you have a dealer handling 2 or more lines,
Yeah.
it's more complicated than just one line.
Yes.
So you have that to cope with, but there are a good many dealer combinations around the country.
Yes.
Dual dealerships.
Yeah. Seems to be maybe.
2 or more.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
But again, I say legally, you've got to proceed, and you can't just go out and say you're through, but I don't like you.
Yeah.
You can't do that.
It's like firing a person. You've got to have some basis.
Yes, you got to have more than that, because if you actually want to terminate a dealer, and you can do it legally,
Yeah.
but you better have done all the right things before you do that,
Mhm.
because the corporation has an appeal court set up to
Okay.
handle dealer complaints
All right.
in such a case as this. What they do is they retain retired judges,
Mm.
and when they have a case, they assign it to Judge so-and-so
Mhm.
in Baltimore, or
Mhm.
wherever he happens to be, and you and the dealer appear before them, and it amounts to a trial.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you better be right, or
Yeah.
else
You may not win.
you won't.
Yeah.
You just won't. And if he tells you no, boy, it's no.
Uh-huh.
That's
And
it.
you're bound by it.
Yes, ma'am.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
That's part of only.
Yeah. How many folks did you have there, Bill, in that department?
Not many. You can't trust too many people with that kind of stuff. No, kidding. I had, let's see, men, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We had 5, 6 men, and about an equal number of girls in that department. That's all. Wasn't big.
Yeah. Was it the same, sort of the same size when you started there, or did it grow over the years?
No, it didn't grow.
It did not grow.
No. Because we lost some work. We lost some work on the 10-day report when that got computerized.
Oh, I see. That actually helped.
That took, oh yes, that did.
Yeah.
So, of course, the rest of the Marines, I don't know how they do it now.
Yeah, right.
This may be,
Who knows?
this may be high treason.
No.
Don't let them sue me.
Yeah, right.
I'll deny it.
Yeah, I know. Now, when did you retire, Bill?
Retired the 30th of April in 1968.
68, okay.
So I've just completed 20 years, really.
Yeah.
Last year completed 20 years of retirement.
Okay. Now, did all of that time that you were back bouncing all around the mulberry bush, that all counted, so to speak, in your longevity? In the sales, as you were, in the 2 years that you spent very first, that you were doing the training program, and that all was part of your longevity?
Part of my 40 years and 9 months.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
What do you think maybe was, what were some of the more significant happenings in that period of time that 40 years, that stand out in your mind?
Well, of course, the biggest thing that happened to me was when I was made zone manager. Zone manager's got a real good job. I don't mean that you can get rich on it.
Well, yeah.
Don't get the wrong impression. But in North Carolina and South Carolina, as zone manager of that small zone it was, I had 100 and some dealers. They presented a very interesting group of people with whom to do business. And you learn a lot from them. They learn some things from you. But unquestionably the biggest event I had was when Ralston called me in and said, you can have your choice of 2 zones, which one do you want?
What kind of a guy was Ralston?
He was a very good, very capable general sales manager.
Okay.
And he was a very nice guy. I didn't really have any personal relationship with him at all, but he was easy to do business with. He knew his stuff. He had come right from the bottom. He had gone through the same things. He had been a district manager for Chevrolet and worked his butt off, getting this, that, and the other thing done from time to time.
Had he come from Chevrolet then?
He was, yes sir, he had been, I forget what, I think he'd been an assistant general sales manager.
Okay.
I think that, for Chevrolet, but I'm not sure. Anyway, one of the top sales jobs at Chevrolet, he had been in that. He was transferred and given a division to be.
So we were doing those kinds of things in that era too, moving people from other divisions
not of course they all try to stay within a division. Yeah. But if you run out of material, silly, but somebody else has got something rotten on the vine.
Right. Okay. How did Ralston manage the organization? Was he, I don't know how to describe him, but maybe authoritarian, or did he use consensus, or what was his management approach?
He ran it all right, but it was done in a very decent and pleasant way. He was, nobody could complain, I think, that Ralston was hard to get along with, or a tough guy to work for. You wouldn't say either one of those things about Ralston.
You could come up to him and ask him a question and talk to him, and he would...
I could talk to him just as I'm talking to you.
He wouldn't snarl at you or something?
No. That ain't true of everybody.
I know.
It was true of him. He was very well liked and respected in the corporation, by the dealers, by his own organization. That's saying a lot. It's easy to get people mad at you. You got a big top job.
Was he there for the full length of time that you were there, or who came along after him?
Well, no. I don't know. Back at the beginning of my career, who was general sales manager?
All right. You probably wouldn't have had much dealing with it, did you?
I had every machining.
Okay.
He was the
Good.
top dog I
Yeah.
had seen.
Yeah.
That was a very brief. I saw him only once. That was in Pittsburgh while I was in school.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, good. So Ralston was the first general
was a-
sales manager that you started to have contact with.
Yes.
Okay.
That's right from that angle.
And then who
Then-
followed along?
Well, after him, well, there was G.R. Jones.
Okay. Now you must have worked for him also.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I worked for him.
How was he different than Ralston? How were the two individuals different?
Well, there was more bluster and noise out of Jones than there was out of Ralston.
Okay.
He had been regional manager of Pacific Coast in Oldsmobile.
All right.
And promoted from that.
Okay. So he was an
General
Oldsmobile
sales
person.
manager. Yes, he was. And after him, Vic Sutherland, who was one of the fellows from the West Coast that he brought with him
All right.
when he came.
He Jones, or he Sutherland.
Yes,
Yeah. Okay.
Sutherland.
Mhm.
And after Vic Sutherland, there was Emmett Feely.
Okay. Well, back up a notch.
Sure.
Rocket Jones, G. Rocket Jones. How did he get that name Rocket?
Well, because of the Rocket 88
All right.
engine.
He was
The
tied
rocket-
with that.
That's where he got the rocket.
Uh-huh.
He fastened on to that, of course, because of his initial G.R. Jones.
Yeah. Okay.
G. Rocket Jones.
Okay.
He'd have been a sucker not to do that job he was in. So that's where that name came from.
Was he the kind of guy you could walk up to and talk to and ask questions
yes.
to?
Oh,
Still?
yes.
All right. Still an outgoing sort of individual.
Yeah, that's right. And not hard to get along with.
All right.
Not hard to
Did
get
he manage the organization any differently than Ralston did?
Well, of course, I didn't see as much of Ralston's management of it, because after I was appointed zone manager, of course, I didn't see Ralston much at all.
All right.
Because you're kind of the regional manager was the guy
That went back.
kept with you.
All right. Okay. Uh-huh.
That was the way the ranks were.
You would just come back to Lansing once or twice a year or something
That's
to
all. That's the only time you'd see
some
see
kind
him.
of a sales meeting or
Yeah.
something.
Until I moved to Lansing, that was as much I'd ever
All right.
had
Okay.
there. And after Vic Sutherland, there was Emmett Feely.
Okay, tell me about, well, Vic Sutherland was his own guy.
Yes, he came from West Coast.
Okay.
He was one of Jones, had worked under Jones
Yeah.
out on the West Coast.
Uh-huh.
And Jones brought him in when he came to Lansing,
Okay.
and Sutherland succeeded.
How did he run the railroad?
He was he wasn't as boisterous, let's say,
All right.
as Jones.
Flamboyant? Or is that a bad word?
I don't know. But, he wasn't that. He was quieter, but a very nice guy, high class
Okay.
and capable.
Okay.
He was a good zone manager. He died, of course, in the
Yes,
job.
yeah, I understood he
It
did,
wasn't
yeah.
really long tenure,
Yes.
but he was a real nice guy and very
Uh-huh.
capable in his job.
All right. Treated people fairly, and another person you could go up to and chat with.
yes.
And,
Yes, indeed.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned Emmett Feely came along.
He came from Chevrolet,
Or he came right direct from Chevrolet
Yes,
to us.
that's
All
right.
right.
and he was quite different from any of the others.
All right.
Of course, anybody from Chevrolet has had a lot of experience. There's no question about that. His personality was very different as well. Of course,
Okay.
Chevrolet wasn't responsible for that. He was.
Must have been something there.
I don't know.
Did the Chevrolet thing?
No, that didn't bother.
That didn't cause a problem.
Didn't
Okay.
bother. He was. That's a good background there.
Yeah, because they were selling a lot of cars and
Yeah.
we weren't selling as many.
Yeah, well, that's right. That's a different. I mean, they have the same problems and whatnot
All
from
right.
one division to another.
Yeah.
No difference there.
Well, was Feely a kind of guy you could go up and chat with, or was he
I wouldn't very much.
less so?
You could.
Yeah.
He was approachable. I don't mean
Yeah.
he was not approachable,
Uh-huh.
but he rattled a little bit.
Okay. It wasn't as easy as walking
No,
with
no.
Ralston or Jones or those kinds of folks.
I started getting started a bad habit. Many times I felt like arguing with Feely.
Oh, really?
Sometimes I did.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And he was rather shocked by me, really.
Oh, was it? Uh-huh.
One of the odd jobs you run into in that job there is once in a while the general sales manager, in this case, Feeling, he wanted a general letter to go to all dealers or something.
Okay.
I called Bill. Well, Bill goes in. So he tells me this, that, and the other thing. Wants me to write the letter, check goes doing
Sure.
it. And to him, if he approves it, we send it out. If he doesn't approve it, we change it and fix it. How goes that? But sometimes there are individual letters beside those letters to all dealers and whatnot. And if somebody read it over, I don't know what the subject was at all. But this person wanted something done. I don't remember who the person was, what their function was, or anything, except that they wanted something done, and they put this in this letter to him. So I wrote a reply to him, and he went through the letter and everything, and we got all through it. Bill, very fine letter, but he says, all you do after all you've written here is to tell him no. He says, you can't do that to people.
You can't.
I said, the hell you can.
What'd you say to that?
Well, he wouldn't take me apart from it.
Yeah.
Doing that.
Yeah.
He was a very reasonable man.
Yeah.
He was not unreasonable at
Yeah.
all. He was approachable, but some of the others were not.
Yeah.
Mac Worden was the next.
All right.
He's a hell of a smart guy.
All right.
He knows his stuff. He is tremendously easy to work with. He was like he was my boy.
Was he?
Got him there. Not the,
This is a recording of William Escher of Boynton Beach, Florida. The recording was made on January 12, 1989 by Jim Walkinshaw of the Oldsmobile History Center. This is tape number 2 of 2 tapes. Okay, back to Mac Worden.
Okay, Mac Worden. I admire the guy. He's tremendous. He came out of Chevrolet too.
Oh, did it?
Yes.
All right.
But he is a tremendously capable guy. I don't know. He went back to the corporation
Yes,
from us.
he left.
But I'm sorry to see him go. He
Was he an approachable sort of guy too?
oh Lord, he was wonderful. He was really an experience. And he was younger than the rest of them had been.
Yeah.
But boy, he had it up here. He had the experience. He knew what you were talking about. He knew everything about the business. Most of the rest of them liked this part of the business, and the rest would they know it.
So they'd forget it.
But he knew everything about this business that I'd heard of. And he was good. He knew how to do things.
Would he listen to people?
Oh yes.
If you had an idea, he'd
Oh yeah.
listen to that.
Well, generally speaking, my job there, I would see a general sales manager at least once a day
Oh yeah.
because I had stuff that I needed proved.
Sure.
So I had to take it home and explain what I had.
Yeah.
So
And you were dealing with the sales, so that people were really interested in
Yes,
that sort of stuff.
he was a Mac Worden. He lives over in Clearwater.
Oh, does he? Okay. Yeah, I didn't realize that. I don't know. I'll have to go see him.
Yeah, I mean, he is a most interesting guy. I haven't seen him since I've been down here, but I've exchanged Christmas cards with him, and I've obviously have great respect for him. That's about all my general sales I do.
Okay, he was there when you left then.
Oh, yes he was. Yes he was.
Okay.
Yes he was.
All right.
Saw him the elephant.
Did you, in your position, Bill, did you have to deal with general managers at all? Much?
Very little.
Very little.
Some, but very little.
Okay. And any of the people in like the manufacturing organization or the
practically none.
accounting organizations? Or?
Well, we had some contact with accounting.
Okay.
Not much. Chad Newman.
Yeah.
You probably
I knew him.
knew him.
Yes.
He used to live here.
Yeah.
A few years back before he died some years back, as you know. No, the accounting department was one where we necessarily had some contacts, but not a great deal, really.
Right.
So really, I I don't know much of anything about the place except singing.
Oh, sure, understand.
But I went from the
Oh, yeah, wow.
the bottom
The
up,
bottom to the top, yeah, so to speak. Yeah.
painful steps.
Uh-huh.
That part of it I know, and I know the jobs from zone manager on down. You can't bump beyond those. I know them because I've done them.
When you mentioned, what was it, 2,000 dealers or 3,000?
3,000.
3,000 dealers. What sort of magnitude would that have been back in the 30s and in that era? Would that have been that number of dealers?
No, that's the time for which I gave you that
Oh,
figure.
all right. So that was then.
How many they got now? Of course, I wouldn't
Yeah,
have any.
yeah.
So in the time I've been gone, see, I have never been back to Lansing since I retired.
Okay, you left and cut the string.
Yeah, that's that. And I wouldn't know a soul if I went there now. I wouldn't know a soul
Okay.
that's there.
Yeah.
And they sure in hell wouldn't know me.
Well, they will.
Oh, Lordy. See, I do have one other thing that
Okay.
you may not want, and it won't hurt my feelings at all.
No.
But one time while I was in the field, this was in '43,
Okay, now let's
I
write.
got an offer of a job in Lansing, and I didn't want to take it.
You didn't want to go back to
No.
town, Lansing?
No.
Okay.
So
This is from M.J. O'Connor.
that's who I'm writing this letter to.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Mhm.
Who is he?
He was the he had been head of business management department. He was then assistant to the general sales manager.
All right.
He was, back at the time of this letter, he was the head of the business management department there.
Okay, so here, this letter is one of those where you declined an offer, so to speak.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
How did that work in the sales department?
Well, that's, you go ahead.
Okay, read on here.
Don't ask me.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's interesting.
I tried a little hard on this letter.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I thought I ought to say it right if I
Yeah,
was.
yeah. Well, and apparently did not have any
No, it
long range
It apparently doesn't.
effects. Yeah. Well, we'll take that back too and put it in the what I call the archives because
Okay.
those are bits and pieces
Well,
of history.
don't put it on that pile because you can just take
No,
this back.
where was the other
I don't
one?
know.
Oh, I know, it's under here. Yeah, this one. Yeah, there we go.
Oh, yeah. There they are.
Yeah. Okay. Bill, what, during those years, any what I would call human interest happenings, things which were kind of the problem of the day, so to speak, that, I mean, obviously every day had problems just as they do today, and they all happened and went on, and another problem occurred, but can you think of any of those kinds of occurrences that might just stick in the back of your mind as at the time was a very, maybe a trying experience or a unique experience that happened?
I don't. I mean, it seems like I should, but I don't.
Well, and so how about any products that we had that you felt were perhaps most unique during that 40-year time period?
Well, of course, you get in a funny position when you work for an automobile manufacturer by a product. From this angle, I've never owned any car but an Oldsmobile.
Mm-hmm.
I have very seldom driven any car,
Okay.
except an Oldsmobile. I don't know what they're like at all.
Mm-hmm.
How good our car is compared to theirs, I don't know.
Yeah. How about things which got the dealers all excited? What kinds of things fired them up out there in those years?
Well, of course, they always had either violent likes or dislikes about the car. You always had some that didn't like it,
Mm-hmm.
which was natural. That
Yeah, sure.
body
Yeah.
did everything, of course. But thing they hate is when they can't get enough cars,
That's their number one bitch, huh?
or when you want to sell them too many cars.
Oh, okay. So there's two bitches, both sides of that coin.
Oh yes,
Uh-huh.
that's what you're constantly dealing with that
Yeah,
with any dealer.
Yeah.
It's very seldom things are just right.
Uh-huh.
So incidentally on that, there's one, I don't know whether it has any importance to you or not, but we have one We have an Oldsmobile dealer here,
Yes.
down in Delray.
Yes.
You know, can't give you his name. It's a hell of a thing to do. I'll think of it in a minute.
Yeah,
It's
that's okay.
messing.
Yeah.
Not that I don't know his name. It's my age gets me.
Yeah, it doesn't click through.
Name losses.
Right. Mhm.
But he is one of the better dealers anybody's got any place.
Mm-hmm.
He has been most successful. He sells a lot of cars.
Mm-hmm.
He makes a lot of money.
Do you treat people right?
He damn right he does.
Mm-hmm.
And he does his he appears on TV himself
Oh.
and does a good job. He appeared on radio before that and did a good job with that.
Mhm.
Talks well.
Mm-hmm.
He's been active politically and in a general way, an active citizen of Delray Beach. He's a real good dealer.
Mm-hmm. And that's good to have.
If you want to
have
see a real good
Yeah,
dealer at a dealership,
yeah.
go to see Google Glassstaff.
Yeah.
Say that for him because he's a great guy.
Yeah. Well, that's excellent when you have a good one.
Yeah, I have enjoyed knowing him.
Yeah.
He came out of Lansing. He was when he got through school at MSU.
Mm-hmm.
He went to work for your dealer there in Lansing.
The story.
Carl Story.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, worked there. I don't know how many years
Yeah.
as a salesman,
Yeah.
but that's where he learned his
Yeah.
stuff. And he was down here when I came. He opened up just about the time I moved to
Mm-hmm.
Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And he's got a beautiful place of business, and he's prominent in the area, and he's real high class.
Mm-hmm. That's great. That's excellent.
If you're listening to TV in this area, you'll hear him on
Well,
TV.
in fact, I remember hearing an ad for an Oldsmobile dealer last night and thinking, that's an interesting ad. Maybe this guy, but I don't remember who it was.
Mhm. Yeah.
Were the contracts between dealers basically all the same?
Oh yes, it's a standard contract.
Standard contract. Okay.
Mhm.
Did you end up having to haggle with any of the dealers over those kinds of things? Who did that? That wasn't you. That was the zone folks.
The zone people do it.
Did that?
Because, I mean, it's very seldom that anybody in Lansing sees a dealer to actually
All right.
do business.
Okay.
They occasionally visit.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what it is, a visit.
Okay.
Yes, you get all sorts of stuff. They want more for less,
Uh-huh.
just like anybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
But most dealers, they have their dealer councils, as you know, the big dealer council meetings. They have practically all automobile manufacturers have a corresponding thing. They don't all call it a council,
Yeah.
but they all have that same thing.
But that's kind of a newer occurrence, isn't it? The dealer council.
Well,
that didn't exist way back.
Not way back.
Yeah. Yeah.
In fact, I don't know when it started, but it started at sometime after that. I would guess in the 40s.
All right. Yeah. But
That's surely, I
that
guess.
kind of thing didn't exist in the 30s.
No.
Yeah. Okay. Did you have in the 30s? Did you have home office get-togethers with your sales organizations?
Not very seldom.
Mm-hmm.
It's very seldom that people from the field went to Lansing.
Went to Lansing. Okay. Did Lansing come to you?
Oh, well, of course, they top management would appear at your announcement meetings,
All right.
or when you had a reason for a big dealer meeting,
Uh-huh.
either the general sales manager or the assistant general sales
Mhm.
manager, somebody else would come.
Okay.
And you had pretty good contact from there, and they were always very helpful and whatnot.
When did we start having the big announcement show things?
Well, during the Wolfram period.
Oh, okay, that was a Wolfram creation.
Well, he was nuts about it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, he just liked that kind of stuff.
All right.
And that naturally made it grow.
Yeah. Okay. Prior to that, it was just.
Well, no, they always had the announcement meetings, the announcement meetings for a new car. So that's always a big event of the year,
All right.
as far as that's concerned. But they got more elaborate, whatnot, more theatrical
Uh-huh.
with
Okay.
Wolfram because
Yeah.
of his feeling for those.
Well, in the 30s, what kind of how would you have? What kind of?
Well, it'd
announcement
really
did-
be rather straightforward. There wouldn't be any.
You'd have a car.
Oh, well, you have
A new
cars,
car,
and
too.
you'd have movie maybe,
All right.
or else slides,
Uh-huh.
and but there wouldn't be any theatrical people,
Yeah.
any hired entertainment.
Yeah.
There wouldn't be any of that stuff in it.
Who would be doing the talking, so to speak?
Well, the general sales manager or an assistant
Okay.
general sales manager generally speaking.
So they would-
sometimes the department head, a sales promotion manager,
Uh-huh.
or an advertising manager might be
would,
there.
would
Whatnot.
come out. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. And then you would travel from zone to zone to zone?
Yeah.
And try, would you attempt to get all the dealers together? Is that how you would
Well,
work that?
for the dealer announcement
Uh-huh.
show, you had at least one meeting a year in the zones.
Okay.
The dealer announcement meeting, when they
Yeah.
announce the new car and show it,
Yeah.
that's always the big
Okay.
meeting thing.
Yeah. And then later on, when we got to the theatrical thing, that thing traveled around the country too?
Some, because of course they had to cut down. They have cut down on the number of places in which they show because, of course, it's easier to get people to travel now to go someplace.
True.
Back then, not many people would think on hopping a plane and come to Lansing
Yeah.
for something.
Yeah.
But now they don't mind going to Las Vegas to see a dealer announcement show.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Most of the travel during the 30s was by car
Travel for whom?
for the dealer. I don't mean the dealer. The sales representatives out in the field. That was all done by car, pretty much. When you were going out to
What?
see dealers.
Out of the zone?
Yes, out of his own office.
Oh, that's the only way you travel.
Okay. You weren't doing any flying.
No. Well, of course, that flying wasn't much flying.
Okay.
Back in the early part.
Yeah.
Of course, that came in later.
Mhm.
But Ralston, for example, he didn't like to fly.
Oh, he did not.
No,
Uh-huh.
he wouldn't fly.
Oh.
When he went someplace, he went on a train.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And some people
You just felt that way.
You know,
Uh-huh.
that way.
Yeah.
So he's the only person that came to my mind for
Uh-huh.
that particular thing.
Yeah.
I knew that about him. But within a zone, the only way you got any place was in a car.
It's by car. Okay.
Well, if you had it going to Lansing, you wouldn't drive to Lansing.
All right.
But any place in the zone
Yeah, when you were going around to see dealers or whoever in the zone.
Unless you, of course, if there's this exception, there's exceptions to all these things.
Yeah.
If you were the zone manager and you if you were the Memphis zone manager and you wanted to talk to the dealers in New Orleans,
Mhm.
you would now take a plane and go down there. You could take a train.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if you weren't a zone manager once going to meet someplace, if you wanted to go to New Orleans, you'd drive a car.
Yeah. Okay. And those would be what would have been called company cars in
Company
those
cars.
days.
Mhm.
What did we sell cars, company cars in those days
Sure.
to people?
Not to individuals except employees.
Okay.
We sold them to
We,
dealers.
we did do that. Uh-huh. Okay.
Some dealers were avid wanting them.
They did.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So some others you couldn't have them on
Uh-huh.
the crowbar.
Yeah. Was the used car business as prevalent in the 20s and 30s as it is today?
It's a big part of the business. Always has been.
It always
will
was.
be.
Uh-huh.
Because you've got to handle 2 to 3 used cars or a new car you handle.
All right. And that same sort of occurrence happened in those early days.
Yes.
Mhm. Did the dealers address the used car business as the same as they do today,
Well,
or did
Of
that?
course, I'm in an extreme area here.
Yeah.
We've got an area down here where they got a bunch of dealers, all makes,
Yeah.
that are on the air, they're
Right.
on TV,
Right.
they're on the radio,
Yeah.
they're in the newspapers, and they're advertising that they're going to sell you a car at $100 below cost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
It's some of them have cheapened the hell out of the business because they do things that are just asinine.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to do it.
Yeah.
Some people got class and some people don't.
True. That is true. Well, anything else, Bill, that you think that you would like to share? I have kind of run out of questions personally.
Oh, that's all right. I don't mind any of your questions. No, really, I've told you
Okay.
pretty much all I had.
Yeah. Any only other thing I could think about? Any unique experiences with sales reps that were out in the field when you were as zone manager that you can think of that might have been a typical kind of situation that might have arisen? People that worked for you at that time?
No. You make me laugh. I'm not laughing at you.
No, I know.
I'm laughing at what I'm remembering. It isn't quite what you asked about.
Okay.
But I'll tell you one on myself.
Oh, okay. That's a unique one.
This is way back. I was living in Atlanta. I'm traveling Georgia, east of there. One of the spots where I had what seemed to be a permanent problem, we had no dealer in Augusta.
Mm-hmm.
I was traveling that area, and of course it was my job to get a dealer. I went to all kinds of people and tried to talk about things, but I couldn't find anybody that was even slightly interested, anybody that had any money,
Mm-hmm.
was slightly interested in things. So one meeting I went to back in Atlanta while this was going on, I think it was the assistant zone manager tackled me in the meeting and said, "Bill, Lansing is on our tail about getting a dealer in Augusta, Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
We've got to get a dealer in Augusta. And what's the situation?" So I told him fairly honestly what the situation was, namely that I didn't have anybody that had any money that was
Mm-hmm.
even faintly interested.
Mm-hmm.
So he says, "Well, you got to have somebody." I said, "I do got somebody. I've got a broke dealer. Dealer went broke with another line. I would be glad to sign up."
Mm-hmm.
He hadn't got any money.
Mm-hmm.
He hadn't got much of a place of business.
Mm-hmm.
He wouldn't be able to sell many cars, but he wouldn't be able to buy many.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to sign him up.
Okay.
So I did. So this guy had to buy one car at a time. He was that close to being broke.
Yeah.
So that time, the Atlanta zone would, with one of their employees, take a car to deliver to a dealer.
Mm-hmm.
If the dealer wanted a car that we had in the warehouse.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And so around the country, probably there's a lot of arrangements like that. Because it's a convenience and it
Sure.
helps you get the car moved. It helps the dealer get it. So anyway, one day while I was calling on this particular dealer, the guy from Atlanta that drove cars drove a car into him, parked the car and whatnot. Of course, I got out of his way while he was doing what he wanted to do with the dealer and whatnot. And he took off and got talking with the dealer about this thing. And went to examine the car with him. He was all pleased with it, of course. I asked him where the hell he got the money to pay for it. He said, "I didn't pay him anymore."
Oh,
God.
or did, yeah.
What am I going to do now?
Yeah.
I can't pay for it either.
Yeah.
Well, I did things that I later found out from the legal department that I could have been jailed for.
Oh,
But I sat this guy down and I gave him unshirted hell.
Mm-hmm.
When he got all through with that, I said, "Come on, let's look at your accounts receivable."
Mm-hmm.
I said, "Let me go down to one by one. What's this one? That's how much money it's
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you go see. Some more. They end up giving me a list of names from
Yeah.
the books, people that owe him money.
That he should go chase.
So I sent him out to go see him.
Mm-hmm.
I was acting like he was working with me. He really wasn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he came back with the money. I took it away from him.
Yeah. Well, at least he could pay that. Yeah.
But the legal department would raise its hair. I always hadn't heard of anybody doing something like this. But I finally got all the money. Not that day.
Yeah.
I stayed there several days.
Yeah.
I made him collect money. And I got the money for that car.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Because it was cash on the barrelhead.
yes.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Right.
Poor guy.
Yeah, that must have been quite close to being shaky.
One day when he was letting me have the money, I was taking it from whichever way you want to put it.
Yeah.
He says, Mr. Escher, could I keep $5 then to buy some groceries?
Oh, no.
You see why I laugh
yeah.
at myself
Oh,
now.
sure.
I didn't know any better.
Yeah.
All I knew that happened is that he owed us for a car and I wanted to get the money.
Yeah.
Well, I got it, but I shouldn't have done it that way.
That, I take, was not the normal way that
No.
we get money.
And I never taught anybody else to do things
Yeah.
like that. Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought of that in a long time.
But you mentioned the warehouse, Bill. What was the warehouse?
Well, warehouse is really whatever place you kept cars in.
Did
Just to rent it.
Did the cars come in then to the zone office? Is that the way?
Well, they came to where you ship them, but at every, cars always go into every zone office, because you have some cars that are, dealers have that ordered singly because they needed a car they didn't have. They didn't need a load.
Okay. So the cars then came in to those locations.
Well, what you did is you made an agreement with a storage outfit that could handle your cars.
All right.
And that's where you stored cars. But that was known as that's the warehouse.
That was the warehouse.
Yes.
And that existed back into the...
Oh, yes.
All the way back,
Yeah,
so to
yeah,
speak.
yeah.
Okay. Well, maybe we've covered it, Bill. Think so? Good job.
Doesn't occur to me.
Good job. Got a lot of good experiences.
I talk a
there.
lot.
Oh, well, that's interesting experiences. Yeah, interesting experiences. So I was trying to think. I had a question on the dealers. Can't remember it. I'll think about it when I leave, but that's the way it goes.
Yeah.
Well, okay. I guess I will shut her off. Appreciate it again.
Okay, well, I've